In the words of Bruce Buffer, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Five Count. I'm Jack Edwards,
I'm Big George.
and we are here to talk about professional wrestling. And we have a great topic for you today. But first of all, we're going to kick it off. We're going to recap the last week or so. It's been a bit. It's been since last Sunday. WrestleMania Sunday happened. Monday Night Raw happened. SmackDown happened. George, what are you seeing? What do you like?
I think you don't mind um, jumping off into where the real meat of the situation kind of takes off with the bloodline. Um, that is going to be a realistically long, drawn out, and beautiful feud here. And I'm just like, I'm ready for the bloodline civil war. I'm ready for it to take off and see who's coming in. Up
Mm-hmm.
live in reaction. I think we're getting new tag team titles.
Oh, really?
Live
I,
reaction right now to Raw. We are. I think we're getting new tag team titles. We have Awesome Truth out here right now on Raw. Um, yeah, no, this is awesome. I mean, um, I think we had a poll out about the belts a while back, but needless to say, this is going to be good. But these last few weeks of Raw, SmackDown, you got a lot of good things coming. Unfortunately, we have some things that have happened since the Mania that have taken place that haven't kind of sat too well. Rhea Ripley's injury that is not going over too well right now, but of course. Learning today that she relinquished her world heavyweight championship for the women's that kind of stings, but it does a lot of things for the company and where it's going. So I think that's
mm,
a good highlight, but yet a bad spot for the company. But there's a lot of star power in there, so you can kind of find some new stuff that's gonna make a good tournament or a good look for that world heavyweight championship on the women's side. So, is there anything that you saw that piqued your interest?
I love the bloodline. I love where it's going. I said it before. They got to elevate Solo, and they did it. I think they're going to do it. I love the beatdown Tama Tonga and uh, and Solo gave on Jimmy Uso. That was for how shitty that match was at WrestleMania. I think that it wasn't that he lost; it was like the crowd lost. But I love it.
Hey,
It was
it's like they read the tweets and it was like, you know what, you gotta pay it forward
got
on that one, Jack. But no, I get what you're saying.
I like
Um,
that, and I think that's going to be interesting. I like where they're going with LA Knight and AJ Styles to meet up, and then hopefully AJ versus Cody at Backlash. That's a nice foray into his title reign, and you know,
you
I
like
like it. I
AJ
like where
versus
they're
Cody?
heading.
I would say I would want to see LA Knight finally get elevated because at the same time, LA Knight is one of them people who's starting to work with everybody, but not getting any title shots, any burn here. But it's of course, I can see him doing more. I can see him being a lot more in the situation that he's actually in. Him and AJ Styles make a great feud. And the
Yeah,
reason why I think LA Knight goes over in that particular situation simply is because I feel like AJ might be getting up there for a little bit of a break. I'm not saying he
uh,
quits, but he might be getting. I feel like a lot of people come in time. Wow, wow.
what?
New tag team titles. Take a look at them. They are different, very different.
Hopefully they're
They have
not
a really
garbage.
old. They have a really old school feel to them. They look like the World Heavyweight Championship a little bit, but not in the shape of big gold, but in the shape of the tag team titles, the with the round shape. Nice plates.
The WWE release pictures
No, it's live right now. I don't
live
know
on
if
Raw.
yeah,
Okay.
live on Raw right now. So yeah, but they actually look pretty nice. I think they look pretty decent for the era.
I mean, they couldn't have looked any worse than the other ones. I mean, the
Yeah,
other ones were horrible.
you
I hope they
never
get to
know.
Medusa those. I hope they get to drop them in the trash on live television. That's what I hope happens.
I don't think they're gonna do that. That'd be hilarious though. But I think that's one of the things that you kind of have to look forward to in the company is like the ladder that the women's championship is gonna have to be climbed. Because when Rhea Ripley gets back, that makes for a better storyline when she comes back and sees whoever is champion at that point, and she
Yeah.
can kind of do I never lost this kind of storyline. So I would
Mhm.
love to see where that can go. Like I was saying with LA Knight, I would love for him to get over. Like I said, I think AJ's up for a little bit of a break. And then with him coming up for a little bit of a break, I think it's time for LA Knight to kind of put his name in the superstar hat. I think he would be a great rival for Cody at the moment. Even
Mhm.
though AJ Styles will make a good spot too, I just don't know if he would be as entertaining as LA Knight would with Cody.
I think LA Knight gets moved over. Gets either. I think he'll end up working Damian Priest. I think because Damian Priest with the draft coming up, I think LA Knight moves, and I think he'll end up working Damian Priest because he's so over. It's like you can't deny him anymore. And I don't think they'll go babyface versus babyface in Cody's first title run, a title match. I think they'll go AJ Styles just because he's
Mm.
a heel, and they've never worked. I don't think they've ever worked, and they'll have a good match. But I think you can move LA Knight over and give like Damian Priest a really fresh challenger, and that would to me that'd be nice. Because then you'd have two really good baby faces on either show, and like LA Knight's just been on fire. Everything he like, the crowd's so into him. Looks good, works good, talks good. That's what you need.
This is a real question because, of course, with Rhea's injury coming up here
Yep.
and Damien's now the world heavyweight champion, what does that say about the Judgment Day? Like, where do they turn? I mean, are they still a legit
Dom, turn to
faction?
Dom.
Is Dom gonna be elevated a little bit more to where he's like not necessarily playing the side card roles or just kind of doing things on pay per views where he's fighting his dad every pay per view? Because I'm noticing some things. I'm like, bruh, how do you change up your storyline right before the pay per view just to fight your dad again? And I'm like, I love the idea of that you don't want your dad to win anything, and I get it, and it's a great heel move. But I feel like he deserves to work with some other talent on a title level. I feel like he can kind of put some heat in the right direction for certain things as well.
Yeah.
So I'm down for it. But
So
I just want to
I
see where
saw
they go.
I saw a picture of the world titles, the tag team belts.
Hmm.
They're better. I mean, they're better than the last ones. But that's just saying a
Yeah,
lot
but
because the last ones were horrible. They're
they like
better.
they're gonna grow on you as far as who holds them
Eh,
and how they hold them
we'll
because
see.
of course we'll see. Yeah,
The Miz has one of them, so that's not a good thing.
you and the hate for the Miz is real ridiculous.
It's fair. It's fair.
It's not. It's not. Like you make his rant valid. You make it like I don't even have to defend him because I can just play the rant and you can see how that would actually play out. But neither here nor there. They're the tag team champions at the moment. You have to respect them for their work. The Miz deserves everything he's getting. It's not like he didn't work everybody to get where he got.
Well, he's there, so yeah, I don't mind those belts though. I don't mind them. I mean, then again, you could have come out with a trash can, and it would have been better than the last ones because the last ones were the worst belts I think I've ever seen. They look like a nickel or a penny, a giant penny,
It was a
and are
giant
horrible.
penny with some horrible, horrible like tag team night type deals that were backwards. It looked like not necessarily a great um, rendition of the tag team titles over the years. I mean, I think we've all seen a better pair, and we can say we've seen that for multiple brands, or we can say we've seen that for different shows as well.
Mhm.
I think those were the worst tag team belts probably ever.
Oh
Probably
God,
ever.
the
I didn't enjoy it.
undisputed worst tag team belts ever. There's no question.
Funny enough, those were the undisputed tag team titles when they first came out, and I was just like, yeah, no, that's not it. They don't, they
Horrible.
don't, they don't work. But moving right along, so kind of spinning off of what Mania kind of did and kind of taking today's show into what it is. I think we kind of have to understand the premise of what today's show is. So put the poll out there. Well, not necessarily a poll. Put the message out there that we've had a real weekend. So we want to
Yep.
talk about things as far as wrestling history that have not only changed the business but were real too. And when
Yeah.
I say change the business, some of them had so much of a ripple effect that
Yeah.
it literally changed the business in so many aspects. Um, and then, of course, there are some things that happened in the ring that happened that were real that don't get talked about enough,
Yeah.
that don't seem to, you know, move people a whole lot. But at the same time, it kind of shook the room a little bit more than what people would like. I know what y'all probably are thinking. What is a real moment that y'all are talking about? Okay, cool. Let me give you an example. A real moment is like when Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar had that moment in the ring where one man took a knee and another man took a punch to the head. That wasn't necessarily scripted, but it was
No,
a real
it
moment.
wasn't
Um,
scripted
it
at
wasn't
all.
scripted, it wasn't written. It didn't. I put it to you like this: it wasn't cleared by nobody,
It
but
was
it
cleared by Brock
happened.
Lesnar.
It was
That's who
cleared
it
by
first.
Brock. It
It was
was
Brock.
cleared by Brock. So, but those moments that happen like that, but some things like that happen, and they don't necessarily change the business. It's more or less, it's a real spot. So some of the
Yeah.
things that we're going to cover today are some of the things that kind of change the business in a huge way.
Yeah.
So the top five of this particular list is going to be kind of hard hitting as far as some of the facts. But it's a
Yeah.
hard list to kind of make today. So I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
It's gonna rub people like a way to see, oh, this is one of the top five moments in history as far as it changed the business and it was a real spot. I get it,
Mhm.
but this is
Yeah.
our top five, and we're gonna
Our
put this
top
one
five.
together. We would love for y'all to get in the comments. We would love for y'all to kind of leave, insight
Absolutely.
on our top five too. But we're gonna give it
Yeah.
to you today, and we're gonna take it one step at a time. This is gonna be one to break down. So lock in, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, I'm wearing some, good Razor Ramon, um, gear. So I'll start off with one of my picks as one of the um most iconic real moments that changed the
Mhm.
business. I'm going with the curtain call. And for
Curtain call.
those of you guys who don't know what the curtain call is, um, there's a nice group of gentlemen they call the Click. You know, Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash. Some of you know Triple H, X Pac, or the 1 2 3 Kid, as some of you may know. And
Shawn
Shawn
Michaels.
Michaels, I think, one of the most famous, guys in the group. So I think
Yeah.
all of them got, together in a match. And the reason why this was so big is that Kevin Nash and Razor Ramon were actually leaving the company at the time. And it was a
Couldn't
big
punish them.
no-no, to say that they were, leaving and do it, in the ring, more or less.
They basically, essentially, they broke kayfabe in the garden, and that had never
Exactly.
happened before. Even though, like,
Never.
everybody kind of was wonder knew it was a work. It was '96, but they broke. They basically went out and had a hug in the garden, and
Mhm.
that had never happened before. And the reaction, I guess, wasn't it
Wasn't
wasn't
too
appreciated.
pleasant. Wasn't too pleasant.
No, not for Triple
But
H.
not for Triple H. But this kind of spins off into two ways as to
Yep.
why it's my number whatever pick in the top five.
Yeah.
So reason number one is because Triple H got into so much trouble, we end up getting Steve Austin at King of the Ring.
Yep.
So then you get Austin 316. You get the whole spark of that era at that particular
Yeah.
time. In the other way, you get Kevin Nash and Razor Ramon going over to WCW and
Yeah.
becoming the NWO, the greatest
Yeah.
faction to ever do it, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But at the same time, man, this is something that spun off from a moment that was so real, so genuine between gentlemen in the business, between good friends. And I'm just like this. Like, if you don't have that curtain call, if you don't have that moment, you don't get the NWO, you don't get Stone Cold, you don't get great rivalries like Stone Cold and The Rock. You don't get great rivalries like the DX coming out of the
You don't
thought
get
of the
DX maybe,
NWO. You don't get DX
but
maybe.
like,
So it's
because
just it's a
remember,
lot of things that transpires from that.
Triple H and Shawn used that footage on Raw when they were kind of in the starting DX. So
Exactly.
they kind of spun off DX,
Hmm.
and it was a big moment. I remember, like, for like it really did a lot because Triple H, I mean, he had the job to everybody. He jobbed to Think Me that year. I think he put me over, and like and it was crazy. Like, you hear it tell the story, like, you're gonna have to eat plates of shit and enjoy it. And but you're right. Like, I mean, it changed because who knows? Like, coming out of that, you got Austin 316 and the NWO already leaving, but it gave him a little bit more steam, obviously, on the way out.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but like then they went and did what they did, and definitely in the top five for sure.
So I got that one up there. Another one, of course, you got to throw in there. Um, the reason why I just won't say one specific incident, I'll just say this person in that year, the year of the pipe bomb, CM Punk. It was
Hmm.
just I went back and watched some footage and I was just like, bro, it was not just the pipe, but the pipe bomb was just the most famous. There was other arguments that he had prior to them getting to the pipe bomb that were pretty big as well. I mean, of course, I put it to you like this: the pipe bomb was just like the cherry on top that you could obviously see. But there was an argument that he was very disgruntled about Vince McMahon and some of the people that he fired
Hmm.
and being some of his good friends and some talent. And I kind of agree with some of that as far as some of the talent that was, let go at the time. Um, and I just think that at that moment that when CM Punk did that, I feel like nobody in the company was trying to step up and trying to say these things. Nobody was trying to
No,
get into the ring or even get into the moment and have this argument or debate about what was really going on behind the scenes. And it felt like, it was a lot of, it felt really silent for a while, but it took a moment. And, we honestly say that that's one of the bigger moments that kind of changed wrestling history. So,
absolutely. Give me 1 sec. I got to change out my earphones because mine are dying. So keep talking.
no. So, as y'all can see, John is going to leave because he didn't come prepared and charge his earbuds. So,
I tried to.
I,
I tried to
so
charge my earbuds.
So we're gonna call this a live submission. Now I feel like John has to forfeit one of his top five picks to me.
That's
But
not
hey,
true at all.
I'm not making up the rules as I go. I'm just
Yes,
saying
you
what could
are.
potentially happen. I'm I'm not a dirty player. You got to catch me with my hands in the cookie jar, baby. I'm not the dirtiest player in the game, but I'll definitely take my advantages when I see fit.
I charged my earbuds, but apparently they did not charge, and I'm looking for my wife's, but of course I can't find them anywhere. So we'll go with these until they die.
Until they die.
I can't find the her work bag. I don't know where she put it. Oh well, we'll find it. Um. Oh wait, right beside me.
Man, I don't want to say what I was thinking because
Yes,
there's
you
so many
do.
thoughts that come in my mind. I'm gonna let it go because
Yes, you do.
irresponsibility comes up as one thing, and then
Oh,
blind.
it's not irresponsible.
It's
It's just
blind.
oblivious. Blind is another. Blind's a fact. So that's 100% true. But yeah, no, I tried to charge these, and apparently they didn't charge properly, which is bloody annoying. And these probably aren't even where I want them. Oh shit, that's fuck it. Anyway, we'll just rock with these. Can you still hear me?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't
All
know.
right, perfect,
I don't know where you decided
perfect.
to go, but hey,
I tried to
no,
find some. So
no. So my first two picks, like I say, I have the pipe bomb as my second pick, and then I have um the curtain call as my first submission to this top five
okay.
list.
Well, I gotta go with I think number one. A bit morbid, but I gotta go with Owen Hart. I mean,
Absolutely.
if things, no, you know, that's as real as it gets, and it's sad. And it was. I remember I watched that. I was 19 years old, and I was watching it. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Couldn't believe it at all. And but that's as real as it gets, and it really had an impact on the business because I kind of changed how things were done in the business a bit. You know,
Yeah.
the and uh, and but it also took away, Owen, who was one of the best. You know, he was one of the best in the world, and really would have had a second career type thing with the guys who were coming in, like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn. Jericho was there, and those kind of guys coming in
Hmm.
he would have really had a good run. But so that was unfortunately sad. The other one, I'm gonna go a bit off the rails here,
Hmm.
because I have a list, a big list here, and it's hard for me to. Actually, I won't. The Montreal Screwjob kind of has to be on the list if we're
Absolutely.
talking about and talk about impact the business. I mean, man, what impacted the business more than that? Vince McMahon, and you know, like it led to the worst finish in WCW pay per view history. but it led to the greatest heel in the history of the business, Vince McMahon. So I got the screw job, and I got, unfortunately, Owen Hart.
Okay. Okay. So as far as a nice number five and potential number five, because now we have to start to rank these, of course, and of course I don't necessarily want to put things out of order, but I'm gonna put in a vote for Eddie Guerrero's rant on WCW leaving WCW and bringing characters with him. So not only did Eddie, because you mentioned earlier Eddie Guerrero, Dean
You're talking
Malenko,
the
Perry
radicals
Saturn,
showing up.
the Radicals showing up when they made their debut, that was big for the business because one, you had top WCW guys from mid card who could easily run the world heavyweight title scene. All four, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
You had a submission machine in Dean Malenko. You had a pure wrestler in Eddie Guerrero. You had Chris B, who we don't want to mention all the time, but he came
He was a good
to
wrestler at that point.
at that point in time. He was a great wrestler. I'm not saying anything else, but when those four wrestlers came over, they actually changed the way the landscape was for WCW so bad to where you kind of have to look at where WCW went right after that. I mean, after they left, there was, more NWO members, and it seemed like everybody was a WO at that point, and it didn't make any sense to have so many WO factions um, running around one show. But that made a big splash because you took
Mm-hmm.
one of the main luchadors, you took one of the leaders in the locker rooms, you took another leader in the locker room and Dane Malenko. And then you have Dane Malenko who comes over and gets in creative at some point in WWE. You have, Eddie
Exactly.
Guerrero who makes the world heavyweight title run that he makes. And Eddie Guerrero's his whole persona was immaculate. Whole
It was
persona
great.
immaculate. Like you don't get to be where he is without putting in the work that he's put in. They didn't. I'm gonna tell you right now. In my opinion, they didn't make him work that hard in WWE to actually get to the top because he was already over. It was
The thing
not.
with
It
Eddie,
wasn't.
yeah.
It wasn't gonna stop.
The thing with Eddie Guerrero is you can't teach what he had. I mean, he was a second generation, part of the Guerrero family. All his brothers wrestled. They were all pretty good. His dad wrestled. I mean, he just had it when he got there in WWE. They allowed him to be more of a persona, a personality. Like when he was doing the Latino Heat thing with China and doing the that whole thing and doing the and then like the Latino Heat thing was it was perfect. It was probably him, but just the volume turned up. And I think that's what made him so popular is that he was real. He wasn't like he was the real deal. I mean, he was a great wrestler. He looked great shape, had a great look. Everything you want. I mean, people's only worry about him was size, but I mean, it didn't matter. In his case, he was too good. He was so good. But and that was a huge turning point, like you said, because WCW was going to push them because they had put the belt on one of them at the end, but they were like, "Nah, we got to get out of here."
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like they kind of lost. In the case of, I never thought Dean Malenko would get to the main event, but Eddie and Chris were definitely main eventers that they lost. And if you looked at who they were working later on, like when they pushed Booker T and stuff like that, they would have been fit in right in perfect with those guys. But WWE got like great main events out of it. I mean, it also ended up, in tragedy, but that's how things go. But it was a big moment for sure. It's definitely for sure. So I don't know if I'll be able to top that just because, but I want to throw one out there so I'm going to throw one as a collective because I think it belongs in two. And I think the time things got real, I think I have to include New Jack in this conversation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. See, this is why you charge your earbuds at nights, kids. You see, and then you have Omission of Guilt, and he's like playing lip reader by himself, saying he charged them.
I charged them. I tried to charge them. They didn't charge.
Sure. And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
I made sure I charged mine right before the show.
I did.
So I didn't have to.
And it didn't charge. And I should. And I don't know why. I thought they charged, and then I'm like, they're almost dead. Well, anyway. So I apologize for that. But
you sound fine.
There you go. I sound good. Anyway, I got to include New Jack. So a couple of the ones I have are the mass transit incident, which happened in Revere, Massachusetts. Pardon me. And there was they had I guess it was Axel Rotten couldn't show up because his grandmother was sick or something. So there's this kid, Eric Koulas, who allegedly falsified his age and said he was 20 or something like that. He was actually 16. And they have him and they talked about this on the documentary WWE. They go more into it on the ECW documentary that Jeremy Borash did. And Blue Meanie was like, this guy was sitting there telling New Jack and Devon Dudley on what kind of spots he wanted to do. Because it was Devon Dudley and this kid against the Gangstas. And so, and apparently this kid wanted to get color. He's like, I've never done it before. New Jack, he's like, he asked me if I could do it. New Jack's like, gladly. And apparently, he cut him to the bone. Cut him to the bone. And it's like, and if that kid and there were lawsuits and the whole thing. And the other one, that was 3 years later, was Grimes at the Living Dangerously pay-per-view. They were on this scaffold.
That's a scaffold when he was about to kill Grimes.
He just pulled him down. And it was like, you just wonder, there was no point of it. I don't know why it happened. New Jack said it really, he's like, it fucked him up. You couldn't, So those are two ones. They didn't really have a wide impact on the business, although they probably did in somehow. I think that I know the first one, the first ECW pay-per-view got pulled.
I would think that would have a lot to do with the "don't try this at home" messages. If you don't think that affected the business anything, I think that had a lot to do with it, especially if you wasn't necessarily doing that on your
Yeah.
particular promotion. You see everything else going over there. So we're gonna say this on our show, so we let parents know, and that kind of could have helped spark the PG-13 era.
A little bit, yeah, like a little, but I don't know as much because they I mean that was before the attitude the mass transit was before the attitude era. So
Yeah,
it
but
kind of
you can say there was nothing in the Attitude Era that was that bad. That
no.
because that's what I'm saying. Like you can see the business start to get a lot lighter after that. Even though the Attitude Era was there, it you still New Jack had that match, and they still hadn't had a first blood match on WWE yet.
Yeah, New Jack was
So
crazy. Like New Jack was wild. I actually met him. He did a show here. This guy who ran the town did a show on a Sunday night. He drew like 40 people, but New Jack was on it. New, I mean, and I met him. He was nice. He was pleasant. But like, I just think like that dude was like he was a great promo, an excellent promo. I wasn't a fan of the blood. I would have used him less. I get what they were doing with him, but that was fine. That was part of his deal, and it was ECW. So, but like he was an excellent promo, but he was as real as it got in wrestling. Like there was no bullshit with him. Like I remember the stuff he did in like Smoky Mountain Wrestling, or the one where he's like, "Thanks, OJ."
thanks, OJ. Yeah, I want to shout out my boy OJ. I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, why?
He was as real as it got, and I just think that like he was different, and he was a real deal. The other one I had, which is an honorable mention, but I have to put it on the honorable mentions list because I love this story, is the APA beating the shit out of Public Enemy. To me, I love hearing that story because John JBL tells it on one of his DVDs where he's like, Public Enemy came, and Terry Taylor tells on that ECW documentary, he's like, they didn't get a great opportunity. Well, if you listen to JBL and Ron Simmons, they came like late and then came to the gorilla position. We're like, we're not going to take the table spot for the finish. And JBL's like, what do you guys an alternative? And they went out, and Ron Simmons said, they don't want to go through the table. We'll bring the table to them. And if you watch the match, it was like, oh, you felt bad for the guys. Like they beat the shit out of them. But it's like, people were whining about it, but I'm like, that's how the business was. It's like, you don't show up without a finish. And with Ron Simmons in the goddamn match and like, just say, we're not going for the finish and expect it to be okay.
Yeah.
Like finishes weren't really negotiable unless you had that power. And it was just like, but I just love Ron Simmons stories. Like, I just like, and it just, I think it sent a message that, and there was a pecking order back then. And that, yeah, there was a bit of bullying and hazing and, it was a different locker room, understandably. But
yeah,
the boys policed the boys back then. Like, that's why they had Wrestlers Court, and they had, those incidents, like if that happened today, it wouldn't be as bad. But like back then it was a Shark Tank, and it was like, we're giving you TV time, don't waste it. And they wanted to waste it. But I don't think that's an honorable mention, but I definitely put New Jack in there. New Jack, I think, is in the list.
I mean, seeing your honorable mention, I just can't. Your honorable mention deserves an honorable mention part 2 to it. I just think you just don't fuck with Ron Simmons.
No,
I think that's what that message is. Because you get in the ring with Ron Simmons, you fuck with him, and he's going to fuck you up in real time. Ask Ahmed Johnson, which could be another, situation that we can kind of talk about. That's another one that got real. Everybody in the business watched on live TV how Ahmed Johnson got worked by Ron Simmons that day, and it was just kind of
midnight shift, man. Like, holy cow!
It was lunch peeled his ass, like just went to work on him. But
Ron Simmons, like, who was it? I forget who coined the term. I think it was Ric Flair who said he's unfuckwithable. He's like, that's what the term he used. He's like, nobody fucks with Ron Simmons, and I remember on Mark Henry, and you've met Mark Henry, so you know the size of Mark Henry.
Absolutely.
And Mark Henry said when he initially, there was a point where he was going to fight Ron Simmons. And he was like, how am I going to, how could, and Stone Cold's like, you were going to fight Ron Simmons? He's like, I was dumb, Steve. I was dumb. Because, like, that guy had respect coming in as a football player, like his football history. He built Florida State. Forget Deion Sanders. It was built on the back of Ron Simmons. He was one of the best nose tackles ever. He was a great football player. Was trained by Hiro Matsuda. Became a great wrestler. The first African-American world champion. And did not get a great run in WCW. They should have used him way more. Yeah. And so when he comes into a locker room, it's like, then he got the gladiator gimmick, you know, and which I love.
Talk about that for a reason.
Austin's line, he's like, he's the only guy who can walk in here wearing that helmet and not going to say anything. And it's true. Like, I mean, and you know, but he had a ton of respect from his peers because he was the real deal. He was like we're talking about real dudes. That's a real deal, dude. Like, that guy was legit. And, but I mean, like, you read about him, you hear guys talk about him, like X-Pac, and he's like, yeah, what are you going to beat me with? Finish, you know, just right in the ring. It's like, beat me with the best thing you got. So he was a businessman too.
Yeah.
He understood it, but I mean, there was respect there for him. And I just, yeah, that's a good way to have your day fucked up, is piss off Ron Simmons.
Piss off Ron Simmons. He'll make sure you finish off the day exactly how you wanted to. And you know, this is a Ron Simmons stan show. The respect for Ron Simmons is real here. Like, we love some Ron Simmons. I think that's just one of the things you have to kind of put out there. There's so many things he's done for the business. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ron Simmons.
He's good at it. Like, he's one of the guys I don't think gets enough credit for being as good as he was.
Absolutely. And taking him on the chin like he did. I mean, he took every role that he had and made it into something. I mean,
do you know, like, his story is like, he's like, yeah, his dad took off one day, turned right. He hadn't seen him since, you know, like, and he had to live with like aunts and uncles. And then he like, they saw him play football. They're like, this kid could be good. So he stayed behind and lived with like a cousin or something like that, or a friend, and just worked his way up and became like, you know, this tremendous athlete, this great wrestler. Just, you know, he was good. He was always really good. He had good work. He always looked great. Like, he had that great look. He was always in shape. He had that amazing voice. Like, you couldn't teach that voice. That's why when he was like the first iteration of Farouk, like, that was a good one because they got to show off his voice and his talk. Because he wasn't talking like super babyface. He was talking like, I'm going to be a heel. And like, you could believe that he was a leader of a group like that. Like, you didn't, you know. So, yeah, this is a Ron Simmons stan account. There's no Ron Simmons slander on this show at all. We were afraid to whip our ass, I think. Have you ever found, hey, damn.
It's like somebody daddy that, you know, you don't mess with them. Like, if you ever go to your friend's house and they have like one of them intimidating parents, and like he stays in the other room and he's always real quiet, but you don't mess with him. He just drinks his beer, watches his TV. Y'all can't make too much noise or he gonna get rowdy. So that's the kind of the feeling of Ron Simmons that I get all the time. But nevertheless, I mean, we got a bunch of good spots as far as wrestling moments that got real.
There's a ton.
And one of the things that I like to kind of come to as far as the top 5 is, so number 5, what do you want to kind of circle? I think we can kind of say number 5 can be the Radicals.
Yeah, I'd probably pick the Radicals definitely over New Jack, obviously, but I had to throw New Jack in there.
Absolutely. That's a real moment that you can't pass by.
Yeah. Just because they showed up, and it's like, just like, not everybody knew, but like, it was a big surprise, and it definitely put a nail in the coffin of WCW if they had any chance after that.
Absolutely.
And it, you know, the 2 of those guys became world champions. Again, shit got real. It got real later, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Eddie Guerrero literally showed up to a show and he called out Ted Turner, James J. Dillon. He wasn't even going after Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff gets out there and just tries to calm him down, but it was already well over to that.
Yeah,
it was terrible. It was like as a kid, I knew something was going wrong on TV. Like I was just like, I don't think he's supposed to be out there with that coffee in that cup. Like
I pour it on myself.
Yeah, I don't think he's supposed to be out there with that, but here we are. Like he's upset. He was disgruntled. He was ready to go. So I totally get it.
Look at them going to the WWE in a round way. I mean, obviously had the stuff that happened, the incident with Benoit and his family. I mean, that kind of changed the business in a way that they started looking at the health of the wrestlers a little more. I mean, you could say what you want about the WWE wellness policy, and it's neither here nor there, but I think they're doing their best, obviously, to like concussions. If a man or woman gets a concussion now, they're off. No question. If you got a concussion back in the day, you work the next day. It was like, hey, that's it. So it's definitely,
I'm pretty sure Mr. So he took a lot of concussions to have, just looking at his brain afterwards.
Yeah, I know. And but they're looking at the things anymore, like chair shots. They outlawed chair shots. They're looking at steroids more of what the impacts of them. And
right.
I think in the way it benefit, it helped the business. It was a horrible way that had to happen, of course, because and the guys, it's just horrible. But in the end, it's people are looking at this stuff more. CT is a real thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think that with the business that you have so many different angles of a headshot you can take, different, angles of a body shot that can go wrong, or a bounce that can be taken that you're not necessarily trying to take. I mean, look at Stone Cold. That was a bump that he was just like, I didn't know that it was going to happen like that. I slid off this table and hurt my back. So at this particular point, we know that there are things that can happen. So I'm kind of glad that they get a little bit more safe. Yeah, it takes away from a lot of things that they used to do. There's a lot of finishers that you're probably never going to see again because of how safe it's become. But there's a lot of finishers nowadays that you get because it is so safe that you can see them do with a lot more safety.
Yeah, and they
a lot more training.
I mean, geez. The stuff that some of the guys do now, they're still taking risks physically. It's just
absolutely
it's more controlled, and the risk is always there. But I think now, they'll stop a match. Like they'll stop a match if somebody gets hurt. It's fair. So number 5 is the Radicals. I have an idea. For the list, but what do you think number 4 should be? I believe it should be the Pipe Bomb. I think Pipe Bomb.
I was gonna say that because of the severity of the other 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like the Pipe Bomb was huge.
It was big.
Affected the business so much that you get a lot of different perspectives as far as CM Punk even coming back was probably never going to happen. If we didn't see it happen this year, we would have never believed it to ever happen again.
No.
And that just kind of goes without saying that it was one of the biggest movements, because with him doing the Pipe Bomb, then going over to AEW, that sparked AEW's kind of a we're for real kind of movement when they got CM Punk. Everybody thought that, we're for real. Are they for real? That's up to y'all to determine. Because guess what, baby? I already got somewhere to be on Monday night. So I just know for a fact that like that movement was something that kind of brought a lot of attention to different things as far as what WWE was doing and what he ended up doing and why he ended up coming back. So,
yeah, it did. It changed his career, and he became a big star after that. That was a star-making promo.
Mm-hmm.
He became a star, and he left, and he went to did whatever he did, and then went to AEW and did there, and then came back. And it seems like he's in a good headspace now. He's doing great work with McIntyre. That's definitely one that changed the business, because I think CM Punk has been one of the bigger names for the last, decade or so.
Right.
So I definitely think it's a spot. It definitely deserves a spot in the list because it was real. It was a great promo but it was a real promo. It was like, it was, he talked about things, told it the way it was. And it was one of the more memorable ones.
If you didn't know anything about what was going on backstage, that was a clear indication not only was something wrong, but he was definitely telling you something that you wasn't going to hear from nobody else.
Yeah.
Especially from his perspective, especially with, how close he is to the top and how many meetings he has with the higher ups and the execs as far as his position in the company at that time. Like, he was the world champion.
Yeah.
And that was the controversy with him. He was a world champion making all this noise. It wasn't the fact that he was just a disgruntled employee. Yeah. Your world heavyweight champion is disgruntled, and it's visibly obvious that y'all can't do nothing about him being disgruntled. It just keeps getting worse. So that, I'll definitely put that at number 4. For number 3, because now we're getting into the thick of things. What do you got for number 3?
The curtain call.
Okay.
Well, and the only reason is like, obviously the curtain call indirectly led to Austin 316. But the screw job was, to me, more of I have it at 2. Owen Hart dying is number 1. I mean,
that's one. Yeah. It doesn't get more real than that.
That's the real thing it did, and that it changed. Like anybody, it changed the business, and just like, because you lost such a star and in a way, and it was so controversial. But the curtain call was controversial, but it didn't really have the impact right away like it did. But it led to Austin 316. The screw job was just bigger because it was like on a pay-per-view, it was such a story, and it led to Vince McMahon, who the biggest heel of all time. And it also led to like the evil authority figure became a part of wrestling, like that.
Right.
Big thing. It pretty much ended Bret Hart's career. I mean, they went to WCW and they had no idea what to do with him. So I put the curtain call 3 and the screw job 2.
And then we definitely have to put Owen past.
Owen 1. I mean,
probably the darkest day in wrestling. Well, one of.
Yeah, there's
a couple dark days. I think that's a whole nother episode for another time. Yeah. The dark days of wrestling, because I think the Dark Side of the Ring covers a lot of that, and I think that's a good television series to get into if you haven't gotten into it on A&E. The Dark Side of the Ring goes into a lot of stuff.
It's on Vice. But I mean, it was a sad day. Like I said, I'll never forget. And Owen being Canadian, like, obviously there's a feeling there. I mean, I was one of the people, there wasn't a lot of us, but I was watching wrestling in 93, 94, 95 when nobody was watching. Like, it was just because they were doing all the cartoony gimmicks, but like Owen was a highlight. He was a highlight, and he was just so talented. I actually had an Owen 316 shirt. The one they had put an Owen 316. I just broke your neck. Like, and it was sad. Like, but it was a different. It was so. And you look back, and it's like, should they have continued the event? Well, you think about it now, and it's like, no, if that happened today, the event is like, thanks, sorry, this happened, we're gone. And I think people would have understood anyways, but that's one of the things that comes up. I mean, and the Dark Side of the Ring, I thought, did a really good job talking to his family. And so Owen was a big deal. And the screw job, it's interesting for me because that weekend was the weekend of Survivor Series. It was also a weekend my buddy and I went to 2 wrestling shows, I think. So we went to Toronto, the Sky Dome, on the Friday before Survivor Series. And I think that's where they unveiled Tiger Ali Singh. I might be wrong. I don't remember. And then on the Monday, we went to Tuesday, we went to Barrie, Ontario, which is just down the street. And that was a great show. It was only like 5,700 people there. It was awesome. But I remember reading on the Saturday about Bret Hart leaving for WCW. He called the newspaper and talked about it. I was like, holy shit, he's gone. And then when you watch, and then the screw job was like, what? No. But they got mileage out of it, and Brett's back, and it was just where were you on that? Did you understand what they did? Or were you upset? Like, what was your feeling?
So when it initially happened, I was too young to actually realize what the hell was going on. I thought it was a part of the show. I was like, why he just spit on this dude? Like, he must not like him for real. And years later, I'm starting to understand, because the thing about it is, fun fact, I didn't watch WWF or WWE often.
That's right.
I was WCW through and through. So when I saw Bret Hart come over, I realized something was wrong. So I had to go back and watch what actually happened. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I'm putting two and two together and just kind of making sense of, the whole situation. But I was so happy to see Bret Hart in WCW. It was great. And, he would show up. But the thing was, they did with him what they always do with new talent or a big name that's coming in from the opposite show, which was a cool gimmick if it was literally just people who came over from that show. But it started to turn into, if you got an attitude today, go find a black and white shirt in the back. Well, let's go jump somebody. And it literally was everybody coming over doing that shit. Like, then you had like,
hey, Vincent, go get a more NWO shirt.
Right. Get Vincent to get an NWO shirt. Hey, Booker T, you can be an NWO. Hey, Stevie Ray, you can be an NWO. Like, the NWO was the NWO was one of the greatest and worst factions in the world at the same time. And I don't think that even makes sense to say.
No, it does.
Kind of confusing somebody. But at the same time, it's like you had in the beginning one of the best core factions that you could ever probably put together.
Yep.
If you would have added one to two pieces to that as legitimate NWO members, you get a whole nother thing for a longer period of time, I think. But, that kind of goes without saying as far as, what happened in WCW history and how the Montreal Screwjob kind of played a part into Bret Hart losing his illustrious career. And WCW did a good job of, trying to take the biggest stars and make the biggest shows out of them.
Yeah.
But they never booked them correctly. It was like you got Goldberg, Bret Hart, Sting, Scott Steiner, and none of these men have all been in a match together. Like, it's just like a bunch of people who didn't get to work with other people.
Yeah.
A lot of matches that shouldn't have been matches. You got the finger poke of doom. We can talk about that.
Oh, we could talk about
all day. That can be the destruction of WCW.
Though I thought was interesting that maybe George, we might have to change the list, my friend.
What do you say?
The night Tony Schiavone said, that'll put some butts in the seats.
That
changed because they had Hogan versus, they just talked about it last night on Wanted Treasures. So
yeah.
They had Hogan versus Nash, and Tony Schiavone said, oh, by the way, Mick Foley's going to
be the win the world.
Yeah, don't watch.
This man freezes once every week. I don't know why. Maybe the internet in Canada is not having a good day today with the internet in Texas. That squirrel is chewing that wire so hard wherever this man is right now. Doesn't he look disgruntled, by the way? I'm sitting up here talking to a picture of this man looking disgruntled. I can hear him clicking.
There we go. Yeah, sorry.
There he is.
The hamster that's running my internet died. I got to get a new one.
I told him the squirrel was chewing on that wire a little bit too hard. So
anyway, like 500,000 homes changed to watch Mick Foley win the world title, and you could argue You could slide that into number 5 with the Radical showing up. I don't know. I just think that's, and it was a real thing. Like they said, hey, we're giving away the finish. And everybody freaking said, oh, really? What's on there? And Austin
Like,
massive pop, like the biggest pop I've ever heard. When that everything's going, like they all beat the shit out of each other, and here comes Austin McMahon's fucking stomp. Oh my god, that was wrestling, man. That was great.
but that might be a veto. That might be because you have to look at the impact of both moments. I mean, yeah, it kind of flipped the businesses inside out, both of them.
You could argue it was the death knell for WCW because they started going downhill after that.
Yeah, not even just the death knell. That literally ended everything about WCW, because once they did that, and even Kevin Nash was like, "We're going in the back and we're watching what's going on over there." Like,
yeah, that was they did the finger poke of doom, and they had that happen the same night. I mean, that's a big impact on the business, like, because that was like, you know, why don't you just set the whole thing on fire? Like that was
the worst moment and the worst thing that one of your announcers gave away that there was another show doing something better. Like, how stupid can you be? Like, I wonder if they ever felt the way about Tony Schiavone after
that. I think Tony was told to do it. He didn't do that on his own. That was Bischoff. That's right out of the Bischoff playbook. And like,
that's a Tony Khan move. Eric
Bischoff did it originally when Nitro started. Like he would say, "Oh, don't watch the other show. Psycho Sid's working Barry Horowitz." And at that time, I was like, "Well, I don't want to see that." But like 4 years later, whenever he did it again, or 3.5,
yeah, it didn't work. It didn't hit home like you thought.
WWE had a bigger audience, and so, but like I get it why he did it. It turned up the heat on things, but at that time it was a really stupid move. It was basically like a Carolina Panthers game, or the Carolina Panthers in an organization. If you could put Carolina Panthers in an organization and a certain time in wrestling, that was it. You couldn't have made any worse moves that night. They couldn't have done, and that's the Carolina Panthers. You couldn't do anything worse than you have been lately. And that was WCW at that point. They made the worst moves, like
consistently. Yeah. It was not just once; it was several times.
And I mean,
in a row.
Yeah, and I love Eric Bischoff. I think he's become like a really good podcaster.
Absolutely,
I love, like, he's a guy I'd love to pick his brain, have him on the show. But like, I get that, like, if you know what is the WCW structure, man, 90% of the people on the friggin' board at Turner didn't want them. They wanted them gone.
Oh, and yeah.
He was battling like corporate, you know, Turner, and they just didn't have it anymore. Like they just like it was still okay. Like they had some shots, but you gradually started to get downhill because you were seeing, you know, more like still seeing Hogan against Flair, still seeing Hogan against Piper, and Flair against Piper. I love that. Don't get me like
good, but it's not what you should hang your hat on.
No, they didn't elevate guys enough that they should have been. Like, I mean,
absolutely.
And so you can't say it all, but I mean, it was a huge moment when things got real, because so you compare that to the Radicals, you say, which basically had two WWE champions, you know, two guys who really made an impact. Well, you know,
one of them,
it basically had Eddie Guerrero. You got Eddie Guerrero out of it. Like, I mean, and so that's, I think both have their merit, because like Eddie was a star, and you know, just so good. I love
Perry Saturn though. Perry Saturn in his WCW days.
But he was never going to be a top guy in WWE, but he had a spot. He was good.
I put it to you like this. I would take Perry Saturn in WCW over his WWE run any day.
He was really good in WCW.
Because WCW, when he was in the Ravens flock and he was feuding with the Ravens flock,
yeah,
that was actually a great storyline.
Yeah.
The only thing about that is they only had 3 good wrestlers in the flock, and everybody else was just like weird jobber ass, just maybe I'm gonna be good one day. Like Lodi, not gonna say he was a bad worker, but he just never really wrestled like that, and he wasn't good in the ring. He was like a Spike Dudley type. He was like the gimmick character.
I
But
like Kidman though. Kidman was good.
Kidman was great. I love Kidman. Billy Kidman is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I used to love his version of the Shooting Star Press
Yeah.
because he looked so fluid doing it. It was perfect. But the thing about him was he was never going to get over on WCW because he didn't have what everybody else on that side had, his size. And so they were kind of going with the old mantra of I want a big guy who can hold the belt. And they kind of stayed with that. And that's kind of why, like I say, the Radicals is such an important move because that left nothing for WCW to build with.
Yeah. All right. So here's what I got on the list. Here's what I think we're sitting at. Honorable mentions. We got 3 of them. I think
Okay.
Ron Simmons just on his own.
Ron Simmons is definitely an honorable mention.
New Jack. I think the mass transit and the one where he pulled Grimes off the balcony. Honorable mention, Mick Foley butts in seats that whole night, January 4th, 1999, I think is a night that it got real. Like, because, for WWE, real good. For WCW,
real bad.
Number
really
5,
bad.
the Radicals showing up. We made the argument there. Number 4, the pipe bomb promo. Number 3, the curtain call. Number 2, the screw job. And number 1, unfortunately, is the death of Owen Hart.
Passing of Owen Hart.
Yeah. So you mentioned about Bret the Hitman Hart. So I met Bret Hart on a couple of occasions. A couple times he was doing a signing. And then 2, I met him personally. One, we were doing a show in Collingwood, our second show we did with Bret Hart. We got Bret Hart. One of the guys we knew was super good friends with him. And so we got Bret Hart. It's like, that's awesome. And so I had to go up to Timmins, which is like 8.5-hour drive in Northern Ontario. And that's where I got a dubious nickname that I will tell you later. And a couple people on national TV were in the car to come up with that nickname too. So that might be when we have Jake O'Reilly on. He'll tell you the nickname. He'll be happy to. So anyway, we were driving up, and I was going to get a picture and do a quick chat with Bret Hart for promotion for our show. Met him. He was okay. He was fine. We went out afterwards, got drunk. It was me, Jake O'Reilly, who's a great pro wrestler out of Canada, and Scotty the Body, the Rock Solid Wrestling Canadian heavyweight champion, who had won the King of Timmins tournament that night. So he's walking around the bar in a crown and a cape. And we went up to Bret Hart, and there's a picture somewhere. I'll share it. And we went up to Bret Hart and talking to him, and it's like, hey, Bret, Jake O'Reilly's doing all the talking, and he's drunk. He says, hey, Bret, you met the King of Timmins? And Bret's like looking at him awkward, and he's like, he looks like Jerry Lawler. O'Reilly, without him missing a beat, he sucks. Let's get a picture. So there's this picture, them mobbing Bret Hart. So Bret comes up, ride with him a bit, and he was all right. Like, he talked about hockey. It was cool. Did the stuff we asked him to do. But at lunch, I knocked over a glass of water, spilled water on Bret. Like,
we gotta have a top 5 moments of where you just kind of
killed
the mood. Mood killers. Top 5 mood killers from John.
Yeah, but I mean, that night he came in, he signed autographs. It was probably the biggest crowd. We did Foley, so it was one of those two was the biggest crowd we had. And like, I saw grown men cry meeting Bret Hart. That's how big people are. Like, somebody once said, Bret Hart's not a Canadian hero. I'm like, fuck, they don't live here. Like, yes, like he was kind of sullen and moody a bit. I know he had just had knee surgery, so, and it was kind of a downer for me for a bit. But looking back on it, I'm like, you know what? It was a good experience. Bret he signed autographs for 2 hours. He made a lot of people happy, so you know you can't argue with that. And but he is a legend for sure. Like, there's, he's a legend. But that's my Bret Hart story. So that's the top 5. That's what made this is all you. I have to give credit to you. This is George's idea. He called me at 3:30 in the morning. Just popped out of bed and thought of this. He said, This is like I got an idea. This was a good episode. This was good stuff.
The reason why this had to happen is because we got moments that are happening in history all the times that we talk about wrestling that we kind of just blow past because it happened.
Yeah.
What do you rank these? Like our top 5 is what our top 5 is.
Yeah.
You guys can add whatever you like to add to the top 5.
Yeah.
Critique the top 5, tear it apart, build a new one, send it to us.
Yeah.
Give us some critiques on what we got out there. But of course, the times that wrestling got real, I mean, some of you may remember some moments that kind of hit you a little bit harder than what it hit us. So let us know what those moments are.
That's the thing. Is like the older I get, because I used to be like down on modern wrestling for a long time, and then it's been the past year or so. I was like, I can't compare it to what it was because it's not what it was.
Absolutely.
So, I had to kind of change my mindset, and I understand that there's different, people. Wrestling's art. So, wrestling's stand-up comedy. Everybody has a different top 5 and a different favorite. Like I see people who share their greatest of all time, and well, I may not agree. I just think that it's definitely like, hearing these top 5s is great because you get to hear different opinions. And I'm older than a lot of people I talk to about wrestling. They're, much younger. So, when I pull out stuff, some people are like, huh? But that's because I'm an old bastard. But I love reading people's top 5s. I know that there's a bunch of guys who are like super big Eddie Guerrero fans. And I mean, I love that guy. So I love hearing people talk about it. I love doing this show. It's just like, it's great to talk wrestling and be involved with people who like wrestling. So, and please let us know, give us any sort of thoughts or feelings. We have a petition out. We started it.
Yes, we did.
Bring back the Winged Eagle, please.
We're trying to bring back the Winged Eagle. So if you guys are on X or any other social media platform like Facebook, I think we have some things we can put on Facebook as part of the petition. But you go in there, sign it, so we can see if we can potentially sway Triple H to kind of go ahead and bring back the Winged Eagle in some kind of capacity. It don't even got to be the old Winged Eagle because I know he's not probably gonna bring that mug out the closet, but some new revised version of it with Cody Rhodes or just here in the future would be quite amazing.
And we will be doing an episode on belts. We were supposed to do it now, but a friend of mine, Cameron, who is an old buddy of mine from here, and we were looking for somebody to have, and he's the perfect person. I know he owns 4 or 5 belts. A common friend of ours used to own all of them. He had like the old Winged Eagle, the tags, everyone who spent so much money on belts. But Cam still has some. He's still got his big gold belt. He's still got a couple others. So he's a good guy to talk about belts because he always looks at them and he always finds them interesting. So we're going to do that episode, and we got a couple more ideas. I got an idea, you and I, George, I think for some milestone episodes where the entire top 5 is it's George, like it's George's or John's top 5. So who are your 5? Who are your 5 guys? Because we're going to have to get that out of the way because everybody always asks, who's your top 5 wrestlers of all time? For me, it's daily. Like, it depends on what I have for breakfast. I mean always a few in there, but I really have to dig it down as to why. And I've really never had a platform to explain why. So I want to do an episode coming up where you and I, the whole episode is you talking about your top 5, and I'll be there to kind of, you can't argue. There's no vetoes on that episode because it's your top 5. Or my top 5. And then
when people hear my top 5 as far as who they are, I don't want y'all to get enamored with, he had a top 5 of geriatric, greasy. No, don't worry about that. My top 5 can rival your top 5, and I guarantee the thing about my top 5 is it's my top 5. If I put it to you like this, if there was a Survivor Series match and my top 5 versus your top 5, I bet my top 5 win. I don't
know. I'll bet you my top 5 drew the house.
If you talking about just drawing money, everybody got a little money on their dockets.
But I love doing it. And we get great feedback. Any feedback, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Like, we love talking wrestling.
Absolutely. Talking it every week. because
Yeah.
we'll be here this weekend with another show.
Yeah.
So don't fear. We're gonna be here. Um, I like to take a quick moment to shout out our consistent supporters and consistent sharers of
Yeah.
the page and the live streams and the constant, tweets and things. We always want to interact with you guys. We always want to make sure you guys know that we listen to your thoughts, listening to your ideas, listening to your top fives that you guys come up with. If you got an idea for a show, run it by us.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know what you have. Like, I know of my friend Brandon. He hits me up with ideas all the time, and because he actually just had one top 5 versions of the Undertaker, and that's a really good one.
Boy,
there's a bunch of them. I think you probably get 7 or 8 out of them.
Yeah.
But
It kind of depends on the year and the version.
Yeah, because again, I can't speak for George, but I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So any help I can get, I will take.
This fucking guy. This fucking guy. In real time, I don't know what I'm doing. What? In my face.
I'm doing my best.
All right, I'll take that. We have to talk about some shit off camera, but I'm gonna let you keep that one.
All right, you guys have a good evening. I'm gonna get to watch Raw and see how the Blue Jays ended up.
He's gonna go ahead and get disappointed. I'm gonna finish Raw and find some dinner. You guys be good, be safe, have a wonderful afternoon.
Evening.
Afternoon is still, it's still the afternoon, is it not? Fuck wrong with him.
Good night.
Good night, people.